Good evening, fellow Rider students, and welcome to Music Madness. I'm your host, Sean Donahue, and with me tonight is Pat Rysai, a music enthusiast. Pat, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing good, Sean. How about you?
I'm doing good. Now, tell me, what is your favorite music?
I'd say my favorite genre of music, I guess you could categorize as rock. If you want to be more specific, I would say more along the lines of metal and indie music. But I also listen to a lot of older classic rock artists.
Now, can you give me a few specific examples of rock that you enjoy listening to, band-wise?
Of rock, I would say older bands you could go with along the lines of Led Zeppelin, Pink Floyd, um, Yes, Eric Clapton, all those types of guys.
Well, that's a very strong list of classical bands. I see that classic rock. It must be a big influence. You're also wearing a Pink Floyd shirt tonight. I could see that. Great album, by the way.
Very good.
Can you actually name a few of your favorite Pink Floyd songs for me?
A few of my favorite songs, I think One of These Days is definitely one of my favorites. That's off of Metal, I think it was.
I think it is. Yes.
Metal. Echoes is a fantastic song off of Echoes, as well as I think off Animals. One of my favorite songs is Pigs, three different ones, and Dogs, definitely, are a few of my favorites.
Now, Animals is a very influential album for Pink Floyd back in the day. Now, would you consider that to be more influential than maybe, say, Dark Side of the Moon and also Shine On You Crazy Diamond?
I would say that as far as the band goes, I think that Animals was one of the more influential albums for them. But as far as actual music and the history of, I would say, I guess rock goes, I think that Dark Side of the Moon definitely played a bigger role in it. Even though I personally prefer Animals over Dark Side of the Moon, but I think that Dark Side of the Moon is definitely a fantastic album as far as its history goes.
I think so as well, actually. I'm quite a big Pink Floyd fan myself. Now, you also mentioned Led Zeppelin, who obviously they are considered one of the godfathers when it comes to classical
Practically
music.
gods, exactly.
Yes, they basically created rock music.
Exactly.
Now, tell me a little bit about Led Zeppelin and what you feel about how they affected music as we go into more modern rock today.
I think that Led Zeppelin definitely are the forefathers of I guess modern heavy metal that I guess you would consider. A lot of their songs were very riff based. They're very guitar driven and very strong as far as a melody goes and as far as a melody is concerned. A lot of people argue that a band like Black Sabbath could be technically considered the real gods of heavy metal, but I think they both share that title, and I think that Led Zeppelin is definitely the pinnacle of all those things, and then some, as far as containing more elements of different types of music and very more atmospheric elements, as well as the very heavy and very loud, heavy driven sound.
Now, you mentioned Black Sabbath. Now, Black Sabbath has a much darker tone when it comes in
Definitely.
comparison to Led Zeppelin. Now, do you feel that as time wore on from the Led Zeppelin era to the Black Sabbath era, and then you get into this grunge era, do you feel that like music has sort of evolved to a point where rock music was not even becoming rock music, it was becoming something completely new?
I think that in a lot of ways, music is always changing, and I think rock definitely is not an exception to that rule. I think that there's definitely a period where the value of rock music and of a song was definitely lost, and I think not to bash grunge. I'm not a very big grunge fan. I'm not a big Kurt Cobain fan, although I do respect him for the for the genius that he is. But I think that like all other types of music, rock has definitely gone through those changes where I feel like everything started from classic rock and then you progressed on to grunge, or I'm sorry, you progressed into like the heavier like metal, like the hair metal and your thrash metal and all that type of stuff. And then you get to the grunge, and then you kind of have this big break of everything where everything comes together, like where we are in the past decade, where everything is still relevant, even though it may not be necessarily mainstream or popular.
Right. And now, in the post-grunge era, a lot of people will say that rock and roll kind of died, that it sort of, it petered out after that era once we lost Kurt Cobain. Now, how do you feel about the current state of rock music in contemporary America today?
In contemporary America, I feel that based on the its original presence way back in the 60s and the 70s and the early 80s and stuff like that, I think that it definitely has shifted from the limelight and is definitely not really a prevalent part of society today. But at the same time, we live in we're very fortunate to live in the era that we do now, because all of that stuff and a lot of newer stuff is very, very able, like, we're very able to get to it. So I it's not a question of what's popular, it's just a question of what you know and who you know and the bands that you know. So I think that if you want to find the music that is more similar to the old rock or has the elements of it, it is definitely not a far-fetched thing to go out and find that music. It's just a question of how hard are you willing to look and how much time are you willing to spend on trying to find it.
I think that's very true. I think that music today has really fragmented it into so many different genres now that rock itself, there's 30 different kinds of rock today.
Exactly.
Now, out of those 30 different kinds of rock, though, can you tell me some of the bands that influence you today?
Today, I definitely can. I think that one of the biggest offshoots of rock is definitely metal, which is basically an extremely heavy rock, basically. I'm much more influenced by, I guess, what you would consider the progressive side of rock, or metal rather. So there are a lot of popular bands like Dream Theater and Symphony X and much more technically oriented bands, Protest the Hero. There are other bands as well that are much heavier, which a lot of people don't like for the sole reason that they are that heavy. But I think one of the biggest ones for me is definitely Dream Theater by far.
Now, do you feel that bands today, from the classical era, they used to have themes and they used to have, the whole idea was to make a good album. And now today, a lot of people feel that it's good to make a good song. Now, why do you think that it's really become that?
I think it's become that because of the era that we live in. Yes, we are very much able to get in possession of new types of music and just any number of different songs. But because of that, I feel as though people tend to think that because they can get their hands on any song they want, that they'll only listen to certain songs. So, although it's a smart way to approach it from a business end of it, a lot of bands will focus most of their time towards a single or towards one song. And the whole idea of the value of an album is completely lost, because bands just want to get their name out there. They want to get that song out there and people get their name in other people's mouths, so that way it stays there. Whereas people, I think, that are much more passionate about music, kind of getting hot water here, but people that are much more passionate about music will spend their time on all 12 songs of an album rather than just 2 or 3 that'll show up in the first half. Then the rest of the half is just a filler that nobody ever remembers, that has no content to it.
Yes, I can see. Now, I also understand that you yourself are a guitar player.
Mm-hmm.
Now, tell me, how long have you been playing the guitar?
I'd say I've been playing the guitar for about 4 years now, roughly. It's definitely, playing any instrument is definitely a very therapeutic thing, and it's also just a fantastic outlet just to get all of your emotions out and just to put them out in a way that's not only good for you but also is very releasing, to just be able to make a song or to just make a.
Do you have a favorite song that you like to play?
I personally don't have a favorite song. I much more focus on, I guess, improvising and making a song based on, what I'm given and stuff like that. So it's very much more oriented with how a song is, or what you make of a song. I'm sorry, than what a song actually is.
I think that's very deep. I think that's why I think you might end up being a very successful guitar player. Well, we're almost out of time tonight. I'd like to thank my guest tonight, and I'd like to also extend this that tomorrow we'll be having Justin Bieber on the show. He'll be appearing live, and he'll also be performing his new hit single, I Have a Son. Good night, everybody.